Welcome to the Pasadena Public Library. Tonight you're here for Bubblegum Music is the Naked Truth. Don't we all just love this music? I think we all need the ladies, our bobby socks and our poodle skirts, and the guys need their bowling shirts and their tie, the long thin black ties. I just love this music, and we're just thrilled tonight to welcome Kim Cooper, who has organized this for us. And we have a whole lineup of wonderful presenters for you. So also I want to encourage you to be sure and read what I've passed out off the shelf. It's a listing of all the activities that are happening this summer at the Pasadena Public Library. And if you see down here on the cover, we have a contest that goes along just exactly with tonight. You too could do this. But we would like to dye our director's hair blue if we get 5,000 signups for Summer Reading Club. It's very easy to do. The directions are just here in the front and the back. So you two can join her if you want to, or come back when we actually have the celebration. So thank you for coming. Be sure and sign up for Summer Reading Club and enjoy the show.
Pretty sure though. I have some slightly bad news. Romans was going to get the book for signing, and they didn't. But if anyone wants souvenirs, I brought a bunch of scramback issues, and they're cheaper. So got some rock and roll magazines. And as for the book, it's out there. You can find it if you want it. It's 14 years old. So I thought that we would start tonight. And it's so great to be in this beautiful room talking about just the silliest stuff in the world that we should never put under these beautiful seats. Which, by the way, can hold your hat. You have a Stetson or something with a nice light wide brim. Check it out. The underside has a lovely. Talking about bubblegum, which is a wonderful, cool thing, but something that the time we started talking about it, people were still looking down their noses. And I think we did a little something to help make that no longer the dialogue around bubblegum music. So I wanted to kind of tell the story of how this book happened. It's kind of a cute, funny story, and there's a few strange paths that it took. It starts with this journal called Scram, which I published from 1992 to 2006, subtitled A Journal of Unpopular Culture. And the editorial philosophy was pretty simple. Celebrate underappreciated genius. Pester my friends who are totally brilliant and lazy to write things. And once they saw that it would actually come out in paper with good cartoons on the cover, sometimes that was enough, or poke them a lot. And also just to find and discover stories that weren't well told. Is that too much?
No.
That's better? Okay. Thank you, Richard. Like when I would interview a band, I would not ask about their music except in the most perfunctory way because everyone does. But usually they had stories, so we get stories. I recommend if you want to know what the Scram interviews are like too, it's online. Read the Dead Moon interview, which is an interview about a couple of people who accidentally fled the United States for the Yukon during Vietnam and ended up killing bears to survive. It's a beautiful rock and roll love story. So that's what Scram's all about. So, among other things that I was writing about, because I couldn't just pester my friends, I had to, actually help fill these pages, I decided to write a bit about bubblegum music. So, for Scram number 4 in 1995, I wrote an article on the erotic subtext behind the public persona of Voice and Heart, the Monkey songwriters. And I want to read a little of that to you. This is from towards the end of the article. Say, for instance, that our nameless, eligible young girl from their song P.O. Box 9847 somehow found herself out on a date with Davy Jones of the Monkees. It would surely be a blissfully innocent experience punctuated by quiet talk and laughter, the feeding of ducks with stale bread, and perhaps a chaste kiss upon the cheek. They probably have met at the library, for God's sake. But Tommy and Bobby seem more likely to pick their frail up right off the strip or from among the taut hordes of knowing, hungry chicks who stand around backstage or wait by the studio gates. Well, you might attract any given monkey with a costume of hip-hugger jeans and a fun pop-art blouse, accented by a nice smile and not too much makeup. To catch the boy's heart eye, you'll have to show a lot more skin and imagination. Most likely, the little girls who bought the Voice and Heart albums were more at home in the former persona, but after listening to songs like Strawberry Girl, Bubblegum stripped of even the pretense of innocence, and catching our boy's shirtless guest appearance on Bewitched, it seems inevitable that they'd start aching for the day that they would turn a slinky 16. I like to imagine that on some ethereal Los Angeles plain 30-odd years ago, these two fantasies might have met and in their fashion coupled. On one hand, the dreams of Voice and Heart, aging tunesmiths remaking themselves as psychedelicized Casanovas. On the other, the half-formed visions of suburban 9-year-olds just beginning to see themselves as erotic creatures in the world. I think they would have liked each other. But out of respect for these spirits' privacy, it seems best to draw a veil over the scene, even in conjecture. So that comes out in Scram 4, and Bobby Hart read it and sent me a really nice letter. It was like a full page long. And then he came over to my apartment and showed me a bunch of photographs from his personal collection. And he didn't even kiss me. There were no back rows. He's just really, really nice. And he was really touched that someone cared. And that was really a nice thing to be able to do. It's a small magazine, but I realized that you could write about these people who had never been taken seriously, and it would make a difference. And then Scram number 5, which you see below. And by the way, the reason these look so amazing is this is from the very brief period when Scott King and Eccentric Millionaire was publishing Scram. And like these issues were like over 100 pages long, and they had these really outrageous layouts. It didn't last long, but it was fun. I guess it's our Guccione period. Anyway, Scram number 5, 1996, featured, yes, Bubblegum Music is the Naked Truth, which was my love letter to the dark, weird side of the genre, specifically the inappropriate lyrical content that flew over the heads of its target audience, presumably. And also in that issue, Scram 5, a mockumentary-style history of rodent rock from the chipmunks to Ratfink, including Ratfink's imagined death in a meth trailer. So after writing these 3 pieces, I figured I was, quote-unquote, done with Bubblegum Music. But no, I get a call from Adam Parfrey, publisher at Feral House, an independent press specializing in high weirdness and the black arts. And I recommend not looking at the pictures and death scenes. They're really awful. Adam also likes bubblegum music, though, go figure, and he's given an advance to a pair of writers in the Northwest for a book on the theme, but discussions are broken down, and since he knows I like bubblegum music, he asked if I would be able to contact these writers, maybe take an editorial role in the project. Not really something I do, I've never done a book, but I call the main writer, and I ask him about the project, and he laughs, and then he kind of grumbles, and it becomes very, very clear that he will not write this book. And I call Adam and I tell him, yeah, it's not going to happen. And he said, oh, that's cool, you know, they sent me the outline. If I send it to you, will you write the book? And I said, no, because that sounds like work, but if you really want a book about bubblegum music, I am prepared to start from scratch. And so that's what ends up happening. I'm not done with Bubblegum, but I'm not alone. David Smay signs on to co-edit with me, and together, and thank God you did, because you really get the post-1970 material in a way that I will never pretend to. And you have kids, so you really get the reasons. You got paid back to write about the Spice Girls. I got my little sister Cheetah in the back there to answer questions about what she thought about vintage bubblegum and contemporary bubblegum. So between us somehow, and all these great contributors, it was really, really special. Chaz Glynn there in the middle, that's the person I pestered the most to write. Totally brilliant.
Yeah, we have 5 minutes.
Okay, better keep going. Okay, thanks. So together we are going to tell the 3D grape-scented true life story of this most underappreciated genre. The book comes out in May of 2001. Incredible notices, and people start talking seriously and respectfully about this amazing music. And around this time, my filmmaker friend Morgan Neville pitches the book to VH1, and they buy it. And Morgan's plan is to make a 5-part, in-depth history of bubblegum that runs over the course of a week. I work on the production and attend some of the dozens of interviews with songwriters, producers, label execs, and artists, many of whom go into greater detail about their bubblegum work than they ever had before. It's going to be totally amazing. And then I leave the project because all the shooting's been done, and I don't know exactly what happens, but VH1 gets cold feet. Morgan takes his name off the project, and even though all the footage has been shot, the 5-part history is shelved, and instead cable viewers get.
You want to put on the show? Okay, after.
Yeah. Oh. I'm going to take a little more than 5 minutes. The reviews were great. I think the astonishing scope and wit was flagged from the Doors.
Okay, I'm coming. I switch a lot of things on and off.
I know. It's very high tech.
I don't know how to take 2 minutes.
Instead of a 5-part series, we got Shannon Doherty.
Yeah. Yeah, this is Bubblegum Babylon, focusing on one narrow aspect of the original theme. It's basically bubblegum behind the music. And they follow Katie Cassidy, David Cassidy's daughter, who is estranged from her dad, and her mom decides to make her a teen idol. And you can't hear it, but trust me, it's embarrassing. The press release says, a cautionary tale about the cost of becoming one of pop's expendable icons, Bubblegum Babylon explores the dark history and culture of carefully crafted, sticky sweet pop music directed towards teens, its songs, its bands, its commercialism, its undeniable relevance from inside the bubblegum music machine. It's $1 billion business, built on fresh-faced looks, catchy hooks, and the best merchandising and marketing money can buy. Bubblegum Babylon goes inside the industry to examine how this preteen pop, see, now it's preteen, earlier it was teen, they don't even know what they're doing, is literally manufactured and profiles the songwriters, producers, impresarios, and image makers behind the cold and calculating business of selling the same kind of band time and time again. All of which was part of what we shot, but it was such a small part. It's sad. So I figure if any of these bubblegummers end up holding up a bank or blowing a building up or something, all this great footage is there in the VH1 MTV archives and it will come out, but otherwise, So this is super disappointing and I do not know what to say. Richard, how do I get my slideshow back?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what to say to all the incredible artists who sat down for these long interviews that ended up in the vault, and I'm thinking, there are no Grammys for bubblegum artists, they never get any respect, they're not going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, we know that much. But we decides these things anyway. I mean, at this point, David and I, we edited the book on bubblegum music, so let's put on an award show. And that's what we do with the help of Kelly, where are you? Kelly Cuba, bubblegum queen. Kelly has a couple of secrets. Secret number 1, she blows the biggest bubblegum bubbles I've ever seen. And at one point, Double Bubble was sponsoring bubblegum book events, and they sent me this measuring caliper, and she won a contest, and the next thing I knew, she was the bubblegum queen, which meant she got to work on this with me. Thank you. And her other secret is she knows how to cure and preserve bubblegum balls so that we can put them on top of these wonderful trophies that you see. And hopefully they haven't rotted in the homes of Ron Dante, Richard Demento, Joey Rubin, etc. And Can Ham, who you see with a lot of flying fringe there, helped at these wonderful events. So the first Bubblegum Achievement Award was January 18, 2003 at the Magic Castle, and we inducted, and I should say, it's not like we voted for the Bubblegum people who needed to be inducted, it was just who would show up. We had a long list. I mean, they were all completely, valid, but it was a list of people who, if they showed up, they would get an award. So the first time was Artie River Buddha, Tony Wine of the Archies, and Mark Woolman of the Turtles and Strawberry Shortcake, special for you, Kelly. And then 2 years later, in October of 2005, we went to the Bob Baker Marionette Theater, and we did an induction for Steve Barry, who produced the all-chimp band Lancelot Link and the Evolution Revolution. Ron Dante of the Archies, and he and Tony Wayne sang. And Joey Levine of the Ohio Express and Dr. Demento, who was always so respectful of this music. And October of 2005 also saw the release of an independent, straight from the book documentary by Kayla Janice up in Canada. And she just basically took the script right out of everybody's essays and made this independent thing that she showed for free with all sorts of vintage footage, completely unlicensed. So if you ever get a chance to see it, it's because she's showing it for free somewhere cool, and I recommend that you do. There was the Texas party for that. And all of this good, clean fun effectively washed the bad taste of our mouth of this whole bubblegum Babylon with Shannon Delbert business. Except, of course, Morgan Neville wasn't involved with any of these, but he turned out okay. So that's the story of the Bubblegum book. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jean Sculatti.
All right. This is a sort of a brief adaptation of a chapter that I wrote in the Bubblegum book called Gator and the Candy Lab. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
It's called Gator and the Candy Lab. It's a brief history of Buddha Records. It goes something like this. The house that Gum built started out as a second home. Buddha Records' official address with the 1910 Fruit Gum Company, the Ohio Express, the Lemon Pipers and such, was initially a getaway pad for business partners Phil Steinberg and Heinz Rothi and producer Artie Ripp. Artie Ripp is known to some pop people because he produced Jane and the Americans, Come a Little Bit Closer, the Shangri-Las, Walk in the Rain, Remember Walk in the Rain. There are also some other gentlemen involved with a lot of vowels in their names, like me, who remain nameless, but they were investors in what was Kama Sutra Records. Founded in 1965 as an offshoot of Kama Sutra Productions, Kama Sutra Records had 1 year later distinguished itself as America's premier independent label, notching numerous hits by The Lovin' Spoonful and Soft with Camel and various other people, including The Innocents. But by 1967, a rapidly souring distribution arrangement with MGM Records had Artie Ripp and Company looking for new gigs. They promptly founded Buddha Records, setting up shop at 1650 Broadway in New York City. I concluded it was irreverent to spell Buddha, B-U-D-D-H-A, like the religion, says Ripp, of the Indo-Asian handle. Besides, I could never say ha at the end of my name, but I could say ah. So that's why Buddha is spelled B-U-D-D-A-H. It was never Buddha's mission to be the hothouse that drew the music America loved to hate. Rather, the label was designed to attract talented writers and producers. Ripp already had Spectre tunesmiths Pete Andrews and Vinnie Poncia online. They wrote a lot of Ronettes hits, and he also had Bo Gentry and Richie Cordell, who wrote Tommy James and the Shondells and Moni Moni, and I Think We're Alone Now, and several of those. The idea was to accommodate unique artists with real prospects for long-term success. Buddha's West Coast A&R chief, a guy named Bob Krasnow, failed in his attempt to sign Frank Zappa's then unaligned Bizarre Records to Buddha for distribution. But he did snag Captain Beefheart, whose early 1967 Safe as Milk album inaugurated Buddha Records. That's the first Buddha album, and officially introduced one of rock's most idiosyncratic and influential artists. They had some other sort of experimental records too, like Barry Goldberg's Reunion and The Beauty of Bruno by Tony Bruno. And then came Neil. Ripp hired a young hotshot promotion man from Philadelphia's Cameo Parkway Records. He was Neil Bogart. That's Neil there on the left with Cats and Castanets. Kim's already talked about it. He was Neil Bogart. He was 24 years old. And he became Buddha's VP and general manager in 1967. His founding philosophy, Artie Ripp recalls, went something like this. Having artists is a long-term game. Who knows how long it will take us in time and records to break these stars. So we need some real hit records. Bogart's aggressiveness is something that Artie Ripp admired. Quote, having seen what he did with Question Mark and Mysterian's 96 Tears at Cameo, he could take that kind of super basic record and just blow it out, bang-o. Among the records Bogart had blown out at Cameo was the Ohio Express's Big Borrow and Steal. So when he brought Buddha a new side by the producers of that garage nugget, Jerry Castanets and Jeff Katz, that's who he's with there, Artie listened. Artie says, I listen and I say, boy, that sounds like a smash, okay? Like it's a brand new trend. But I think we're going to buy ourselves into a challenge here. We're all of a sudden going to have this badge on us if we chase this music. On the one hand, we'll be challenged as a label putting out these records, which had no real artists, aimed at a very young head. On the other hand, we generate income and solidify the company right out of the gate. Rip and his partners concluded that it was an acceptable risk. Simon Says hit the Hot 100 in January 1968, eventually selling 2 million singles and rising to number 4 on the Billboard chart. By May, the Ohio Express's Yummy Yummy was on its way to the same peak. Buddha's foundation was down, and the walls were going up fast, courtesy of Katz Castanets' producing and Bogart's pushing. But while the music's preteen target audiences clamored for gum, radio chewed slowly, and it didn't always like the taste. West Coast top 40 stations, particularly Bill Drake's powerful RKO chain, they operated in Los Angeles' KHJ and San Francisco's KFRC, decided that despite the ringing request lines, Buddha's gooey goods did not fit the image they wanted to project. 1968 saw the decade's most pitched battles between America's warring cultures, already hemorrhaging young adult listeners to the new rock FM stations. The last thing AM Top 40 wanted was to be seen as square, or to be left alone with a constituency of 10-year-olds. Where radio refused to play Buddha's Gum, Bogart's promo squad redoubled its efforts. We just said, you guys got to be crazy, explains Rip. You're ignoring this music. It's like they just dropped the atom bomb and your news department refuses to put the story on the air. You know, that's pretty much what it was. Radio eventually succumbed thanks to the label's relentless promotional blitz and a program of in-house perks. Buddha back to dance concerts, teams at 80 teenage hullabaloo nightclubs competed to devise the most original steps to Simon Says, while a tie-in with American Airlines rewarded the label's sales staff 50,000 bonus miles for their efforts on behalf of Yummy Yummy. At retail, a secret shopper, a woman who identified herself as Betty Buddha, visited record stores asking first for a non-Buddha record. If the sales clerk then tried to sell her a Buddha disc, Betty identified herself and handed the clerk $50. Pretty good deal. Buddha celebrated its first anniversary in September 1968 as the nation's 7th ranked label in sales, in single sales. A remarkable feat considering the then crowded field. While it enjoyed success in the fields of general pop rock with Lou Christie and Brooklyn Bridge, and also in R&B with the Impressions, they had Curtis Mayfield's distributed label there, and the Isley Brothers. It was largely the sticky stuff that sealed the imprint's success. Within Buddha's Bubblegum factory, within Buddha's Bubblegum laboratory, teams of hook candy creatives labored day and night, perfecting irresistible sugar fixes. Katz Castanets oversaw their own writing stable, which included Elliot Chiprit. He wrote the Prepubescent Company's Simon Says, and May I Take a Giant Step Into Your Mind, and Levine and Resnick. They wrote the Ohio Express's Yummy Yummy, Chewy Chewy, and Down to Lulu's. There was also Artie's Army, that's Rip's original Kama Sutra composers Bo Gentry and Richie Cordell and Bobby Bloom. They collaborated on the Fruit Gum Company's Indian Giver and Special Delivery. The hectic work pace often occasioned the repurposing of both material and artists. Andrew Smith and the Hyannisports, great names. Do that again. Andrew Smith and the Hyannisports satire on Bobby Kennedy's presidential bid, Bobby Says, blatantly sampled Simon Says. The Lemon Pipers, a real live living band from Cincinnati whose repertoire included such psych funk workouts as 50-Year Void, were transformed into Bubble Puppies. Okay. They were transformed into Bubble Puppies by writer-producer Paul Lita, who fed them green tambourine, rice is nice, and jelly jungle. And that's wonderful. And since Buddha's biggest records were being made by acts that didn't exist outside the studio anyway, who'd object if the lab cooked up a few more? The call for hits and the necessity of commanding shelf space almost demanded such chicanery. Brand identification was the goal. On what other label would one expect to find such fanciful concoctions as the Tidal Wave, Frosted Flakes, Saltwater Taffy, the Mulberry Fruit Man, the JCW Rat Things, the Camel Drivers, and the Rock and Roll Double Bubble Trading Card Company of Philadelphia, 19141. Bubblegum music prospered into 1969, but the Buddha variety quickly lost its flavor. The label's last gum success, the Ohio Express's Mercy, and the Fruit Gum Company's special delivery made the Hot 100 in May of 1969, less than 8 months after Time magazine had crowned Bogart king of pop's cotton candy castle. By then, his crown had lost much of its luster, thanks to such fizzled schemes as the Cats Castanets singing orchestral circles. The masterminds behind that. The 40-member Bubblegum supergroups, that sink in for a while, the 40-member Bubblegum supergroup played Carnegie Hall, but a subsequent tour and TV documentary drew scant response. There was also the shamelessly phony Naked Truth album campaign. The 6 nude bodies on the cover of the album, Bogart told the press of the forthcoming album, represented the freedom of expression common to music today, the new attitude toward living. Upon its release, the front jacket of the Bubblegum compilation featured 6 cavorting toddlers. It failed to ignite controversy or sales. Buddha's demise was surely hastened by its assembly line approach. How were potential record buyers to tell the difference between the Mustard Family and the Carnaby Street Runners? It was too much too soon, but it was also not enough where it counts. Bogart's hit city philosophy had generated a 1-year streak of white-hot singles, but it had done little for album sales. Of 6 Billboard charting Fruit Gum and Ohio Express LPs, the highest charted posting was 129. At the end of the day, explains Artie Rip, if you were going to be the new Motown, the new Atlantic, you had to have the Arethas, the Ray Charles, the Bob Dylans, the stars who would keep you selling albums, and bubblegum music didn't have that. To say nothing of the reptilian payback monster Bogart's experiments had unleashed. In 1969, we sat down again with Frank Zappa to seriously discuss distributing bizarre records, which had now emerged as a very real thing, says Artie Rip. That's when the hit alligator bit me in the ass. Despite Buddha's initial braveness with Captain Beefheart, Zappa passed. How could I, remembers him asking, allow Bizarre to be connected with Buddha, the home of bubblegum music? The big daddy of Avant Pop wound up taking his roster of the Mothers, Alice Cooper, Wildman Fisher, the GTOs, Jeff Simmons, over to Warner Dupree's. It was almost as if Buddha was fated to pay for its short-lived bubble of prosperity. The badge the label pinned on itself when it issued Simon Says seemed to ensure that the artist-attracting cool factor Rip had sought would forever elude Buddha. The company did go on to sell albums by Melanie, Gladys Knight, and Pips, Curtis Mayfield, and others, but it sustained itself until its 1983 demise, largely in the singles game. That was Melanie's Candles and the Rain was a big hit. There's Gladys Knight's Midnight Train to Georgia, and the Andrea True connection with more. By then, the architects of Buddha's early success had left the building. Artie Rip exited in 1970, when the board of the educational media company had bought the label in 1969, refused to issue the Woodstock movie and soundtrack to which he had acquired rights. Look there, you can see Ohio Express performing there. Right after Jimi Hendrix. Anyway, the directors of the publicly traded company had seen TV news coverage of sex, mud, and rock and roll and decided that an association with the festival was not their best interest. I told them, says Rip, you got involved with Kama Sutra and Buddha Records. Did you think you were getting involved with the Vatican? Rip went on to discover and manage Billy Joel, and he remains active in the music and in the entertainment industry today. Neil Bogart quit Buddha in 1973 to found Casablanca Records, while the label's flagship act, Kiss, proved to be among the most enduring in pop. The house that Disco built, Casablanca Records, like Buddha, was hit-fixated and producer-driven. Giorgio Moroder and, how do you pronounce his last name? Jacques Morali, was that right? Okay. I should know, he sounds Italian. The minds behind Donna Summer and the Village People respectively called the shots. Bogart died of cancer in 1982. The perception was that bubblegum music wasn't hip enough for Flex Rip. Yet the reality was that the gum songs and the dance groove of the records had a wonderful, fun aspect to them. It was something in the 60s that wasn't heavy or with a political agenda. It was smile, have a good time. Everything is not so significant that you can't take a moment out to laugh. Everything doesn't have to be Einstein's theory or change the world. Sometimes, though, it seems as if the world will never change, as if some bad reps, no matter how undeserved, are destined to stick to their carriers forever. Buddha Records closed for business in 1983, but as late as December 1999, a Washington Post writer reviewing a Captain Beefheart reissue wondered how the surrealist auteur ever could have consorted with, quote, a label that specialized in bubblegum music, squeaky, clean pop singles aimed directly at children and early adolescents. It was an odd place for the Dada captain to begin. The same year, the BMG music conglomerate reactivated Buddha, spelled the right way this time, as an archival imprint to mine its many acquired catalogs. For 2 years, Buddha reissued albums by Melanie, Waylon Jennings, Duke Ellington, The Flaming Groupies, Dr. Seuss, Henry Rollins, and finally, compilations by the Ohio Express, the Lemon Pipers, and the 1910 Fruit Gum Company.
End of story.
Next, Becky Ebenkamp's going to tell us about how Vice is very, very nice, especially if you're writing bubblegum music. And I should warn anyone with sensitive ears, there's some adult language in this chapter.
My name is Becky. I did four essays for the book, and tonight I'm going to read something I wrote about lyrics and the subtext in a lot of bubblegum cartoon songs. And hey, Shelley. I think Ginger was just saying something about squeaky clean bubblegum, so I'm here to say the opposite of that. And my chapter is very tongue-in-cheek. But since, okay, I have 15 minutes, and I timed mine out at 13 minutes. So I wanted to read a little intro that Kim wrote on her Bubblegum is the Naked Truth story, first round, because it sets up mine really well, too. If you do not wish to have your illusions about bubblegum destroyed, you should read no further than this paragraph. The chapter that follows is an exploration of the dark side of a genre which, to all appearances, dwelt entirely in the light. If you still cling to the notion of a happy world composed of sugar-cone hills and chocolate milk streams, where cotton candy robins yank gummy worms from shredded coconut lawns and then kiss them kindly and return them to the soil, and the wind blows a lovely scent of peppermint and spice, well, I don't want to be the one to take that away from you. Don't worry, your happy candy world is still there, and there are no shadows on the lawns. Now turn the page quick before you're ensnared by my evil heresies. Okay, and here's my story, which is called Vice is Nice. As long as they make you go, And you know, like I said, reading this over, it's been 15 years, it's very dated, but so is bubblegum music, I guess. So think pre-September 11th, I'm writing this. It's a good thing that Tipper Gore and her PMRC minions weren't around during the heyday of bubblegum music, as doubtless they would have found the lyrics inherently more obscene than anything ever penned by El Duce or Luther Campbell. That songwriters got their jollies by fortifying bubblegum with dirty double entendre lyrics that bypass the ears of the average unsuspecting kid or not terribly with it record exec is an idea that has been heatedly debated. Still, while the existence of the smutty subtext is seemingly buried deep beneath the hard candy coating, other more frighteningly transgressive concepts, such as incest, bestiality, and kiddie porn appear to hover right on the surface, broadcast to the nation's 9-year-olds through mouthpiece groups like the Brady Bunch, the Evolution Revolution, and the Chattanooga Cats. Fuck metaphors, said the brazen, envelope-pushing songwriters, who apparently felt no need to obfuscate their wacko agendas. Which sort of begs the question, what the hell were they thinking? Well, anthropologists may posit that incest is taboo in every known culture. It was alive and well on a Paramount soundstage circa 1970, where Brady Bunch cast members were pairing off so furiously, one might think that they were privy to advance notice of some world-devastating flood. So admitted Barry Gray Williams in his book Growing Up Brady, a point later confirmed by sundry other giggling former Bradys in E-Channel docs and tabloid fare. I'm going to try to put the Brady Bunch on here. Am I just clicking? Okay. Williams copped to having had the lots for TV stepsister Maureen Marcia McCormick, But nowhere on the tube does this bro sis wanna tryst vibe come across as strong as in the recording studio, where producer Jackie Mills apparently didn't see any irony in the duo's rendition of Candy's Sugar Shop, the side 2 opener on the vocally challenged cast's 3rd musical outing, The Kids from the Brady Bunch. Considering what we know today, that the Brady kids were all but boning their tic-tac-toe board counterparts out back in Tiger's doghouse, the already dubious lyrics, rooted in Bubblegum's stock sugar as a stand-in for sex structure, take on startlingly perverse proportions. While the bunch specialized in chorusy, harmony-free sing-alongs of current chart toppers like Lobo's Me and You and a Dog Named Boo, this catchy and surprising melodic original, set to a funk-fortified Bo Diddley beat, paired the show's eldest stepsons, Williams and McCormick, to trade off suggestive lyrics that might pass for sexy were they not posing as kin on a weekly TV basis. Sample at your own risk. The lyrics, I want to take you to my sugar shop, so come on. I want to give you all the love I got, so come on. Candy kisses in the moonlight, sugar shopping all through the night. Sipping milkshakes in the hot sun. Come on, sugar, come and give me some. Barry Williams. On the paper, the sweets equals sex metaphor isn't enough to convince the skeptic. I'm sorry, that was if on paper. The passion play, handed out by Prepubescent horn dog Williams surely will. Upon listening, it's difficult not to envision the polyclad teens making eyes, or worse, making out. When Barry growls out, I got such a sweet tooth, or come on sugar, come and give me some, one can practically envision him sprouting his first facial hair right there in the recording booth. Or something much worse. Poor McCormick, her sweet vibrato makes Williams' delivery seem all the more lascivious, and one gets the sense that her coyness masks a naivete on the level of Serge Gainsbourg protege Franz Gall, who found out too late that she wasn't just singing about sucking lollipops, but subtextually cocked. Prehistoric was an oft-co-opt motif throughout the 1960s, thanks to the popularity of the Flintstones, one that especially resonated with the garage bands forming all across the lower 48, as teen boys picked up cheap guitars and set out to pursue the new American dream, to be the British Rolling Stones. Both well-known and obscure acts, borrowed from bedrock in name, the Barbarians, the Monkees, Song, the Avengers, Be a Caveman, Joni Summers, Johnny Get Angry, the Emperor's I Want My Woman, or Dress, Sonny and Cher, the Robs, Paul Revere and the Raiders. The boys sometimes ditched their colonial garb in favor of copying of caveman gear on the road to obtain a primitive vibe. But while wannabe Neanderthals specialized in copying a cocky, club my woman over the head and drag her back to the cave by the hair attitude, all their most sexist lyrics combined couldn't match the basic instinct laid down in a single track by Lancelot Link and the Evolution Revolution. After all, who could out-primate a rock group comprised of actual chimpanzees? I'm actually going to play this one more.
I think you unplugged the cable. Hold on. I think you unplugged the cable. You unplugged it. It's okay. You unplugged the cable.
On Saturday morning TV series, the Lancelot Link Secret Chip Hour. Basically, it gets smart gone apeshit. Protagonists glance and not a hurry, and their primate pals, thank you, provided musical interludes between the show's spy versus spy themed skits. Playing guitar, Link, drums, Banana Marmoset, and Farfisa organ, Sweetwater Gibbons. While decked out in Beatle wigs, fringed vests, and Roger McGuinn granny glasses, the Evolution Revolution was a sight to behold. An eponymous record on Dunhill ABC Records soon followed. Courtesy of writer-singer-producer Steve Hoffman, standout songs such as Shall I Love You and Yummy Love are the apex of pure innocuous pop and rightly earned their standing next to the best recordings of the Archies. But while the EdRev appeared to promote personal expression and gender equality, a bettified, blonde-wigged Mata Hari plays Tambourine. The lyrics belie the egalitarian look to reveal a smattering of old-school sexism. You thought only human males suffered from Madonna whore complexes, or applied to the sexes a double standard. Apparently, these are tactics open to anyone equipped with one Y chromosome and two opposable thumbs. Just add 3 chords and stir. In Teaser, a prudish vocalist chastises a chimpette for promoting free love. Girl, you spread yourself around like strawberry jam. Another beef of his, you asked me to come over and we turn off the lights. An activity that Mr. Willing Participant doesn't seem to have a problem with until the morning after. Yet the very next song on the LP, Wild Dreams and Jelly Beans, The amnesiac singer can't understand why you've been holding out on me, probably for fear of being labeled a slut, banana breath. But nowhere is sex objectification more evident than in Kiss and Doll, where a macho monkey man struts into the department store and picks out his desired merchandise, the babe behind the counter. This wouldn't be nearly as offensive if you weren't so dang cocky about it. Can I help you? That's what she said. I took one look at her and I said, yeah, I'm looking for something just like you. I'm looking for a Kiss and Doll. I'm sure you'll do. Her response to the smarmiest pickup lines? Since the song was written by a guy, let's just say Lance Romance didn't have to club the gal to walk off with the greatest bargain in town. But thankfully, there's no indication that Link was rolling in the clover with anything but fellow simians. For some of our cartoon songsters, it appears prefer to partake in dalliances across species. Another video on.
I think you disconnect the cable.
Okay. The covert approach was mixed for the Scooby-Doo song Daydreamin'. One of the ditties by Brady, Josie, Partridge, Songsmith, Dan Jansen that would play as the Hanna-Barbera crew was being chased past limited cell animation backgrounds by various imposter mummies and ghouls. For there is no use for the thinly veiled subliminal message when a song proudly proclaims in its opening line, I'm in love with an ostrich. You're pretty much out of the closet at that point. After the bird love apologist, Shaggy, confesses his should-be forbidden romance, the relationship serves as a metaphor for following one's heart and maintaining individuality in a cookie-cutter world. So if you find somebody who loves you and your friends are all complaining, they're not friends anyway. Just go out in the sun, because it's so much fun. Forget the rest of the world. Put your head in the sand. A noble, worthy sentiment, albeit not one normally reserved for or extended to foul, F-O-W-L, fetishes. A tribute to zoophilia would be incomplete without a nod to Ben, a film ballad interpreted by Michael Jackson and later Brady gal Maureen McCormick. Not that two versions are needed. Maureen mimics perfectly Mike's prepubescent falsetto. If boy-rat friendship is the song's outward theme, as with Daydreamin', finding unconventional love in an unaccepting world is the underlying message, especially when the world is a post-Richard Gere, Chernobyl rumors world, extra especially when sung by Jacko. But all pale in comparison to the well-documented, at least in this book, Hot Dog, the Archie's odious ode to their fave Fleabag, simultaneously redefining the term doggy style and elevating puppy love to a new plane. The song is paws down the most egregious example of music bestiality. I don't know and I don't care if songwriting team Arkin and Adams were the most naive duo roaming the planet or trying to get away with major murder here. Doesn't matter. What comes across is unadulterated mutt smut. Perhaps it wasn't their fault that the comic gang's pooch unfortunately shared its nasty name with a phallic sign term. But knowing that, as any snickering 5-year-old does, should have been enough to erect a stop sign right there and there. So disturbing is the song, which manages to metaphorically mangle references to junk food, sex, and household pets, that the don't tell show strategy is best in relaying its ramifications. Let the lyrics speak for themselves. So put some mustard on my roll, 'cause you're barking up my soul. Hot dog. So wag your tail and let me know just how much you love me so, hot dog. I really relish you. Who can embellish you? Even if the wiener/dog connection is dismissed as coincidence or ignorance on the songwriter's part, clearly one cannot ignore the idea that boy-dog romance is implied via such lines as, oh, how good your kissing feels, or 'cause you love me like you should. Sentiments the same person might bestow on Betty or Veronica, but certainly not man's best friend. Okay, time?
Yeah.
There's a fine line between multiculturalism and racism, especially in the postmodern, post-BC, post-everything era. The line was often crossed in an attempt to enlighten the kiddies to diversity, or perhaps more importantly, placate watchdogs during the golden age of Saturday morning TV. If featuring a sea of whiteness was a sin of omission, attempts at showcasing a broader representation of races and cultures came off, especially in retrospect, as self-conscious quoting, quota-filling, and or blatant caricaturing. Where's Fat Albert and the joke? say something about Bill Johnson. Whereas Fat Albert and the Jackson 5 came across as genuine because of the involvement of Bill Cosby and a flesh and blood musical group. Other cartoons were obviously attempts to plug a token dark face into a character set. Some shows followed what could be called a racist Super Friends format. Dick Tracy with his stereotypical sidekicks, the lazy Mexican, the Japanese martial arts expert, the Irish cop on the beat. Lance Link, and the Peppy and Pop is Hell theme song, to which runs through a smorgasbord of exotically evil Cold War enemies. Naturally, when a show had spin-off music, the same traits shine through. Wombles were a fine specimen of this not exactly racist, but offensive window into another world via the 3-minute pop song. The Root Children's series produced music that, at its best, pulls off a sweet fused with croft sensibility, and at its worst, comes off more like Van A Tad Twee. Those with weak stomach for Jack Wild's Song and Dance or Honey Pie type McCartney numbers might want to avoid the catalog entirely. Highlighting various factions of the fluffy, tidy creatures whose hobbies included doing the laundry and collecting litter, singer-songwriter-arranger Mike Batt cast off tunes covering all the genre bases over the course of 5 albums, including the rousing anthem, Remember You're a Womble, Country and Western, Nashville Rumbles, the Barbershop Quartet, Down at the Barbershop, the Beach Boys Harmonies, Wombling Summer Party, and the torchy folk bond theme to Wimbledon with Love. Then there's Ping Pong Ball, which details the lives of the Oriental, not a bad word then, Wombles, who exercise their Oriental litter-picking skills by cleaning up old chop suey tins as rickshaws rattle by. Opening with the clash of a gong and followed by Ching Chong Chinatown flourishes, backup Wombles warble and sped up Chinese chipmunk voices that conjure up images of characters outfitted with massive buck teeth and severely slanted eyes, borderline distasteful, but in actuality probably no more offensive than the average tourist travelogue of the day. Ping Pong Ball is also one of the catchiest Wombles tunes. I'm hitting the right one here. This one's for our friend Shelley. Also hard hit, Native Americans, who got the treatment from the Swede, Wig Wham Bam, and a double whammy from 1910 Fruit Gun Company, a band that recorded Indian Giver, a term that has since been deemed disparaging and fond of donning tribal garb and prop squaw for photo shoots. A half dozen years or so before streaking came into vogue, the Chattanooga Cats were encouraging children to take it off, take it all off, in my birthday suit. It is not known whether the lyricists were advocating kiddie porn or some misguided, hippified back to the garden ethic, but frankly, either way, it's disgusting. For those who didn't own the record, all this was played out through an episode of the Saturday morning show where the Hanna-Barbera feline trio performed as go-go gal groupie Kitty Joe per How Do You Like Me in My Birthday Suit? Aren't I cute in my birthday suit? While dancing en naturel. Innocent fun, perhaps, but just a hop, skip, and a jump to want to snap a few Polaroids of me and my birthday suit. While rock scholars were busy debating the existence of lyrical, sexual shenanigans in the likes of Louie Louie, 96 Tears, or some Jim Morrison edible rant, the average 9-year-old circa 1969 was quietly compiling an exuberantly smutty record collection, and no one ever seemed to notice. Add the above examples of transgressive bubblegum to the genre's better-known references to Little Willies, Cucumber Castles, Dickie Dons, and tummies full of love, and even the most trusting listener must eventually sense a pattern. Sometimes a cigar isn't just a pink pastel bubblegum cigar. Thank you. Next up is David Smay. He's going to talk about bubblegum and glam. Thank you.
I'm David Smay. I'm one of the I'll just stand aside while you're working on that. I'm one of the co-editors of the book. I wrote about the Archies for Scram magazine, and then Kim decided that's a guy that has a discerning ear. He knows a lot about the Archies, and at the time we were writing the book, it was interesting because the internet existed but was useless. And so I would go off on my lunch break and I would go to the Virgin Megastore, something else which is gone away now. They had a huge book section there, music books, and that's where I finally tracked down the hidden ethnicity and story behind Andy Kim, who had sort of double-blinded his ethnicity behind his music publishing company, which was Joaquin Music. But then it turned out that he was actually a Lebanese Jew from Montreal. So that's where you get Sugar from people like that. So the Archies actually would follow naturally in the story that we follow here. But I'm going to skip the Archies and go right into some stuff on land. Can you actually show up the video first for me? Let's do the first video, the one I labeled video 1 to make this very simple for you. I'm going to do a little reverse engineering here. Yeah, that's it. So we're going to cut, this is like 76. This is the King Show by Croft. That guy, Bert Summers, the hat, he played at Woodstock as a little folk act, and he actually had some connections with, he's from upstate New York, and so, yeah, so this is 76, this is not a regular TV show, and it's very glammed out. This is all glam rock look, but you're thinking about like David Bowie and T-Rex, and you're thinking like, how did it get to be so completely watered down into the Pop Super Show, which was totally appealing to me when I was watching this in 1976. I was already 15, so but I was still into it. The Croft Super Show ran for 2 years, and then after the second season, they had something even better than the Croft Super Show, which is they had the Bay City Rollers, who were already in decline, but they're looking for something to do for a living. So I love the fact that almost everybody has a bubble perm except the lead guy. And I think they'll make a comeback to that. It's at the Boulder City somewhere. I can tell what's going on there. There's the music for it. It doesn't look like LA?
Army in Atlanta, where the Croft has a theme park.
Okay, there you go. That makes sense. So yeah, this is Marty Croft production. So this is what they're rating out. And then yeah, here's your Fonzie head character. He's the lead singer. He's Captain Cool. Okay. Yeah. There's the comic relief and more comic relief. And there's the microphone. All right. So this is a brief view of Captain Cool and the Kong. And you can see that this is there all the look of glam and really none of the essence of glam. There's none of the sense of danger. You're getting a little bit of Wonderbug, Electro Woman and Dinah Girl, the Croft Super Show. So I just wanted to run a little bit of this first. I don't know how to get out of this. How do I get out of this back to the things? So we're going to do a little reverse engineering and kind of talk about how glam started off as something very transgressive and then became something kid-friendly. All right, so here we are, Candy in the Underworld. There's Captain Cool and the Kongs. Is the sound still rolling on? After watching Becky's presentation, I decided that all of the presidential debates should be done with Lance Link and the Secret Chimp playing the sound in the background because it makes everything better, right? So, all right, so yeah, so I had a literary illusion, and when I wrote the piece in the book about glam rock, I was like, plump, stately Gary Glitter ascended the hit charts. He's like James Joyce, because he was going to slip in a little James Joyce when you're talking about Gary Glitter. I say feel free to boo because he's in jail now for 16 years for having sex with underage kids. Boo. Go ahead, boo. Like a lot of glam stars in the 70s, he was a veteran from the 60s. His name was Paul Gadd, and he became Paul Raven, and then he became nobody because he was not going anywhere. And then a musician from the 60s, Mike Leander, hooked up with him, and his breakthrough hit is the one that's still played at stadiums, which is Rock and Roll Part 2. And if you've ever wondered, there is in fact a Rock and Roll Part 1, which is mostly him just going, rock and roll, rock and roll. So that's, oh, you don't listen to that part, you just listen to the drum beat because that's all the good stuff. That broke him out, and then he had a bunch of hits in England, but that's not the beginning of glam. The beginning of glam, let's define our terms here. We've talked about bubblegum a little bit, but glam, we're not talking about, you know, Hollywood Boulevard and Poison. We're talking about like Mascara, so just make that distinction clear. We're talking about early 70s music, Bowie, T-Rex, things like that. That's where it started. You know, in the movie Velvet Goldmine, he sort of posits a David Bowie love affair with Iggy Pop. But I maintain it's really David Bowie's love for Mark Bolan that's the genesis for the whole thing. At one point during the 60s, David Bowie opened for Mark Bolan, who was doing his hippie act, Tyrannosaurus Rex, an acoustic act with lots of songs about hobbity creatures, and he opened as a mime. Which, you know, is the thing that's always amazed me about David Bowie is that the guy that's like one of the coolest guys in the history of the world was a mime for 2 years, played in a folk rock group with his girlfriend named Feathers, you know, and was a science fiction fanatic, and he still turns out to be the coolest guy. So, They had an interesting art show at the Tate Liverpool a couple years ago where they charted all of the visual arts elements that were going into glam before glam kind of broke out into a popular phenomenon. And that's really interesting to chart because you can see it's really an outgrowth of not just pop culture, but the whole pop aesthetic that was coming out, and the Warhol aesthetic and the Hockney aesthetic, and all of these things were sort of curdling under, and then you had the Warhol influence through the show Pork, which was playing in England. But into that moment, so basically T-Rex breaks out in '71. They have like a series of hits, and it's just galvanizing the kids because they're tired of the hippie stuff, and so they're eager to hear something new. And we wouldn't describe T-Rex as bubblegum, but when they do something better, they kind of create a pop moment, and they create this open space where other bands can kind of come in. Let's see if I can find a good tune that made expand. This is one of the shows that was on regularly. Lift Off with Aishia. That ran for several years. She was dating Roy Wood from Wizard, and he actually produced a song for her. She was also on this TV show. That's not her. Anybody know who this is? Any of my panelists? This girl with the purple wig? That's Gabriel Drake. That's Nick Drake's sister. This is a TV show called UFO by Jerry Anderson, the guy that did Thunderbirds and all the little Super Mario Nation shows. But Lift Off with Aishia was an example of the kind of TV show that they had in Britain at the time, where they would bring on pop acts and play them for kids. It's sort of like Kitty A Go-Go, I guess, would be in America, but this was a nationally shown thing. And it was different from Top of the Pops. It was purposely designed to introduce musicians to kids. And one of the bands that they showed off there very early on, not this guy, I'm going to go back and forth here a little bit. There was Sweet. So Sweet started, look at how cute they are. So the story of Sweet is kind of interesting, especially coming after listening to Gene talk about the hustle that was happening at Buddha Records, because it's all about the hustle of Bubblegum. And that was one of the things that interested Kim and me when we wrote about the story, is that you have this crass commercialism at its like most aggressive, kind of intersecting with relatively innocent children's entertainment, combined with like psychedelic music, which was happening at the time. And then you get to England a little bit later, and all of a sudden you have this transgressive sexual imagery that's happening with it. So the Sweet started as a band called Sweet Shop, and they were basically like a Deep Purple kind of a band, and they were getting nowhere. And so they hooked up with these two guys, Nicky Chin and Mike Chapman. And so their song's usually called Chinny Chap, because they had a knack for pounding out songs. There's a little allusion there, because Mike Chapman produced the first album of that. So these guys, Mike Chapman came from Australia, Nicky Chin from England. There was a British show called Opportunity Knocks, which was sort of a talent show. They cheated to win it, so which kind of shows their sort of unchecked ambition that they had. So they listened to the Archies having all these hits, and they talked to the guys in Sweet, who were kind of between singles, and they said, "You guys are good singers, why don't you come in and cut some demos for us?" And they were like, "We're going to cut some songs exactly like the Archies." So that's when they did Funny Funny. Their early string of hits, which don't get played that much nowadays. When you think of Sweet, you think of the glam era stuff, but their early stuff was very specifically modeled on the Archies. They even covered an Archie song, Get on the Line. And so they did, let's see, their first couple of hits were Funny Funny, which Kira uses at the beginning of our documentary, Papa Joe, and things like that. And we get to Wig Wham Bam. They didn't let Sweet play on them, even though they were very talented musicians, very competent. They didn't let them play on them, which caused a lot of tension, as you can imagine. So they're starting to have hits and show up things. So they finally fight their way into the studio. The man that was producing them was a guy called Phil Wingman, who we'll get to in a little bit. He's related to this entire story. And so this is where they take this sort of pop moment that Mark Bolan has opened up and David Bowie has exploded, and they aim just a little bit lower than the 16-year-olds who are buying all the Bowie records. They're getting like to their teeny bopper kids underneath them. And they create these perfect pop songs for them. And around the time of let's see, Wig Wam Bam, Sweet is allowed to play on their own instruments, and the songs become tougher, a little harder. And but they're still produced by Chin and Chapman and Phil Wayman. Can we show one of the songs here? It's coming up here, and this one I have to set up a little bit and warn you. It's kind of a springtime in Hitler moment. It's the, the bass player for the suite is a guy named Steve Priest, who totally got into camping it up every TV performance that he was in. He was the Top of the Pops, yeah. So let's go with that. Yeah, here it is, Blockbuster. I'll talk a little about the song. Let's just play it for a second so you can kind of see. The first time I showed this to my friend Matthew Spector, he just turned to me with his mouth dropped. See it? Yeah. So he's a novelist. Anyway, so you'll see everybody. There's Brian Connolly, the lead singer, in his Golden Lemonade Tiger outfit. It's just awesome. And wait till you see Steve Priest, the bass player. He'll be over on the slate, on the other right. That's Brian over there. They're gonna hold off here a second because it's just too awesome. There it is. So he's got a Kaiser helmet on, silver glam boots, a Hitler mustache painted on his nose, and a swastika on his sleeve. And this played on Christmas Day, 1973. So you have to see when he does his little. Here it comes. That's my favorite part here. That's when my friend Matthew turned to me and was like, "What is that? What is this?" And it's the wonder glam rock is what it is. So this is where it's kind of, this is a Chinny Tap song, so it's just a great thumping beat. The song sounds a little familiar. That riff is exactly the same as the riff for Gene Genie, which Boyd put out at the same time. But they both stole that riff from Jeff Beck's version of I'm a Man for the Yardbirds. In fact, they were pretty pissed at it. Bowie came up to them and was like, "You fucking bastards, you stole that before I could steal it." So, but nonetheless, this is a big hit. One of their big glam hits during this period. They're on Top of the Pops, which is where you would show off all of these shows. And glam kind of exploded. So they follow in the wake of, so you have to kind of do a little timeline here. So you've got Mark Bolan hitting in 1971, and there he is. Love it. And then after Mark Bolan, you've got Bowie coming out with Ziggy Stardust, and then comes this stuff. And so I guess we can go off. I could watch this all day, but we're going to go off this, and I have been watching a lot of sweet videos recently. But let's go back to the slideshow here. The informative portion. So go back to Nikki Chan and Mike Chapman. So it was very interesting watching Gene pull up a picture of Castanets and Cats and Neil Bogart, because Bubblegum is all about the hustle. It's always about the classic hustle. And one of the things that we learned when I did the book is that you make money in Bubblegum because you're the producer and the songwriter, so you get to do a double dip on the royalties. And so you make more money that way. And so you don't really care who's up front doing the stuff for you. You want to be a producer-writer, which is how you make your money. And then the story of Bubblegum kind of splits between people who are exploited and wind up terribly used and tossed off to the side. People like Menudo, as you can imagine, or the Bay City Rollers, that we'll get to in a second. And then the people who are behind the scenes who know how the music business really works, and then they make a lot of money. And they go off and do other things. After the glam era, Mike Chapman went on to become one of the major music producers during the New Wave era. So, he did Blondie's Eat to the Beat, and we called him the Captain. And he also did, I think, the Knack's first album. I mentioned that too. So, but that sound, the big beady sound that you associate with those New Wave hits, comes from these two guys. I'm going to back up a little bit, because I wanted to talk about Alan Merrill. So that's Alan Merrill there. He is the son of Helen Merrill, the jazz singer, and so she moved to Japan in the late 60s. Trust me, I'll tie this all back into glam in a second. So he grew up in upstate New York. He had his own band called, I think, the Watchtower, and he used to play in the Village at Cafe Wall. So he's playing in the same venues where, when you think it's weird when you think about who was playing in the Village in 1965, because it's like Jimi Hendrix, the Velvet Underground, the Rascals, Leslie West's band, Vagrants, Bruce Springsteen's early band, and then Alan Merrill and his group. And he was associated with a lot of people. There's this little scene in upstate New York kind of surrounding the band, The Left Bank. Michael Brown, who died recently, was the songwriter there. Because they had recording studio equipment, which was not that common, it kind of attracted all of the musicians that are here. And so Alan Merrill is one person who worked with the Left Bank, kind of in their later stages when the band was falling apart. But also Bert Summers, the guy that I pointed out to you, and Captain Cool and the Kongs, also worked with the Left Bank. And so did Sylvain of the New York Dolls. So just an interesting thing. Alan Merrill goes to Japan and he becomes a teen idol while he's over there. In fact, he starts as a model because he's so pretty and androgynous looking that nobody can figure out whether he's a boy or a girl. So it's very glam rock in their way. And it became this huge, then he wound up doing a record, he's a musician, and then he wound up creating the first glam rock band in Japan called Vodka Collins. They're great, they sound very T-Rexy, and their one album was reissued a couple years ago, so you can find it on CD. So, and I'm going to come back to Alan in a second, because you're going to see what happens to him. So when we did the first Bubblegum book, well, the Bubblegum book, Kim and I found that there were certain people, their career is like a needle. They kind of stitch together all of these pieces of pop history when you kind of follow their career. Toni Wine is somebody like that, you know, so she was a teen prodigy at Juilliard, and she walked down the street to the Brill Building, or actually 1650 Broadway, you know, goes in and she pitches Groovy Kind of Love as a teenager, and it goes out and becomes a hit for Wayne Fontana and the Mindbenders, and then she becomes a big demo singer because she has a great voice, and so she's singing on the Archie's hits, and then she, you know, is the foundation of Dawn and Candida, and then she, who did she marry? She married like some producer that she wound up singing like on Townes Van Zandt records late in her career. So her career just keeps going on and on. Ron Dante is another person whose career kind of like strings to a lot of things. So Alan Merrill starts as a pop singer in Japan. He forms a glam band, and then he goes to England because he's getting ripped off by his manager, which is another one of the recurrent themes during all of this stuff. And he forms a band in England, which we'll get to in a second. Let's see. Okay. So this is the band that he forms, Arrows, and let's do a clip of that song, since you can do that one. Yep. So what happens is that the Bay City Rollers have a TV show on Granada, and they have that for one season, and then they go off to do other things, and they're replaced by Arrows. And this is the thing that Alan Merrill contributed to the history of rock and roll. Yeah. Granada TV, it's shot in Manchester. He wrote it, so yeah, that's his song. And this is where Joan Jett saw it. She was in England and she was watching their TV show. So, and you can see, we'll get a look at him here. This is how they always shot the shows. This is how the Bay City Roller show was shot on the same set. That they changed the background and stuff like that. Look how pretty he is. He's like, pretty as David Cassidy, and he could rock, and he's got this great song that he wrote. So, but I mentioned that a lot of the background story in all these is that you're getting ripped off by your managers. So, their problem was they signed this deal where they had a TV show, a very popular TV show, for 2 years. They were a band writing their own songs and recording them. They had a fight with their manager, Mickey Most, and he wouldn't release any records while they were on TV for a few years. So they were not able to capitalize on it at all. So, so another sad tale of being used and used. But again, this is an intersection of rock and roll and glam and bubblegum, because this is a show that's aimed at kids. Granada TV also did the Bay City Roller show, which is called Shang-a-Lang, and it also did the show that Mark Bolan did at the end of his career when he was making a comeback. So Mark, they shot 6 episodes, which was also, I think it was a summer series that was aimed at kids as well. So again, these are all rock and roll shows that are kind of aimed at kids. You're getting kind of farther away from the glam era. So this is like 76 again, so they're getting away from the early androgyny, but it's still much the same sound, the classic glam rock sound. And of course, it's trying to be a huge hit for Joan Jett. So, all right, look out for the arrows. I'll get back to my slides here. What's that? Just a free string right now, it's pretty face. So he stayed in music. He wanted to become, a touring musician. He's still out there, he's still alive. He's got great interviews. He's got a great website which kind of chronicles his long career from upstate New York to Japan, and a lot of pictures of his career. So now we get to the Bay City Rollers. So it's just like, I think, the quintessence of glam and gum. The moment where they kind of joined together. And in the book, I talked a little bit about the history of boy bands, and I noted that there are equal parts bubblegum, glam, and boy band. And the key, I wrote a history of boy bands for the book. And one of the things I noticed that you have to each have a distinct character in a boy band. You have to like play them out. There has to be the cute one, and there has to be the innocent one, and the goofy one, and you have to have the older one. Just and that's been played out, you know, since the Beatles, where they're the model. That every like NSYNC or Backstreet Boys will follow the same sort of a method. So the sad and interesting story about the Bay City Rollers, when we started the book, Hannah Parker really wanted to get into the dark and dirty side of the story of Bubblegum. So we had Gary Glitter going, you know, to jail for sleeping with underage girls. But Bay City Rollers wound up like being like they were like a Bubblegum Babylon kind of disaster, where the drummer Derek Longmuir was arrested for child pornography. Lead singer Les McKean killed his neighbor in vehicular manslaughter. You know, just their manager Tam Patton, who was a gay man, got arrested for going to jail for sleeping with underage boys. Just so we were showing that everybody's taking advantage of the 70s. So, so they started in, obviously, in Scotland. They started as a band called the Saxons. It was just the two brothers who were the rhythm section, the drummer and the bass player, Derek and Alan. The one that looks very old in the back. He's been around for a while. He belonged to the two. And then actually they had a hit in 1971 with a cover of Keep On Dancing, the Gentry song. And that's another thing that happens with Bubblegum a lot, is that they would recycle a lot of hits from the early 60s, and they're just bringing them back again. They keep doing, like Andy Kim doing Baby, I Love You, right? And then, so that was very common to recycle the hits from that era, especially for the really good songwriters. So then the Bay City Rollers came on, and so they had a hit in '71 with the original lead singer. It was not this guy. It was a guy named Nobby Clark. And he got terribly bored with the band. He recorded one of the songs with them, and he left the band right before the next song hit, which is called, remember, not Walking in the Sand, but it's Sha-La-La, something like that. And it takes off like literally weeks after he leaves the band, and they hired this cute new guy to be in it. So all these guys are kind of late additions to like this long-running story of how to put this band together. And the band was put together by Phil Wayman, the guy who was the producer for The Sweet. And so he would not let them play on their own records because they were not good musicians like The Sweet. And so he made them just kind of stand inside and do the recordings. And they actually recorded Saturday Night in '73, and it didn't go anywhere. And so they finally, it broke kind of randomly, like in '75 at the end of the glam era, and it became a huge hit, not only in England, but in the US. And that kind of like brought the band back around. It was sort of like the story similar to the Zombies having like a hit after they disbanded and then kind of having to come back and tour. So, you know, this is something that had played out over like a 5-year period of people coming and going and not getting their break and not having anything, and then randomly out of nowhere, the song takes off and becomes huge. You know, Roller Mania is massive. You can't even imagine just actually, there you go. Why imagine it when I got a visual for you? There are girls passing out. All right, I'm almost done. So Roller Mania becomes huge, and then it just, it's just a classic case of mismanagement where the manager is just kind of running the band into the ground and not giving them any creative autonomy. So it's kind of the sad rundown of the story. My interest in glam and bubblegum started when I guess when I would sort of realize that there was this whole component of it that was, there's an element that starts with David Bowie, and you get it also in Roxy Music, which is the artier end of glam rock, that they were going to use rock and roll as a platform to do pop art projects. You know, there was going to be a way to explore pop art by being an actual pop star. And this became sort of the natural continuation of that idea, where they, at first with Bowie, you have something that's, you know, he describes Ziggy and the Stardust as like, it's like the Monkees, but better. So you find that kind of that finding is sort of apotheosis, you know, in bands that were really bubblegum completely, but had the guise of glam rock, which became sort of this default rock and roll setting, which you finally see when you circle back around to like Captain Cool and the Kongs. It's just like completely taken, you know, away from its origins, and you wind up with something with a lot of shiny satin and no sort of context, you know, for it, and it's strange if people have the glitter or makeup on, but it really is going nowhere in particular. So I think that's it for the thing. Well, sure, I've got one more video to show, so we can go with that. So I'll go with like the ultimate, I think, glam bubblegum song. Well, they're more entertaining than me, certainly. So we'll close out with the classic. You can turn it up.
I can't turn it up anymore.
That it is? All right.
I'll try and turn it up.
Yeah.
I'll try and turn it up.
Just from the Roller's own TV show, Shang-Lang. There's no sound on this? There we go. All right. So their own show, Shang Lang, which they would show once a week, and it was an hour-long show, and they would have people on like the Rubettes, and Shawawadi, and Gary Glitter, and you can see they were in their cartoon outfits there. Which I kind of ripped off from another band group called the Juke, who were a little Scottish boot boy sort of vibe, and there's really nothing bad happened with him, so just you don't have to worry about him. The innocent looking one, nothing horrible. It was very sad when I was looking at the pictures, like Derek with his long, luscious blonde hair here is like a bald fat man arrested for child pornography charges. And here's the last two recklessly just wiped out his neighbor at 75 miles an hour. Took her out. Here's Eric Faulkner. Let's have these horrible fights with Eric Faulkner, who was an actual guitarist and wanted to record his own music. There's Alan, he's the older one, you can see. And he's like, what the hell am I doing here? This is not why I got into music in 1963. With my band, The Saxons. So you can actually do this kind of the same stuff with the arrow shot. I do this kind of like the figures of things. I do like the race flare stuff, and then Haskell Wexler has a lot of answer for it, but not this. It's just even better. You know, we have a lot of race flares constantly with the camera. And, so, well, the Bay Rollers, you know, they hit their peak in 76, 77, while Romania sued, and then because their manager stole their money, while he was busy having sex with underage boys, they were kind of left in a position of what to do next, and they were going to kind of break up, but in fact, Sid and Marty Fox said, oh, you're even better than Captain Cool and the Consequence, come over here, and so they did a show in America called the Bay Rollers Show, in 78, much after their heyday, and that was another Saturday morning show. So the bubblegum exploitation and extended well beyond the 60s and into the 70s and continued on into the 80s and into the 90s because there's always going to have that element. One thing I just want to emphasize to people, when I was doing a lot of stuff on Boy Bands, I kept getting interviewed on the Jonas Brothers when they were big, and I done some research on the Jonas Brothers and for them on the Kids in the Block and the Backstreet Boys. And the thing that people don't realize is how much money they make. This is not $1 million industry. They make $1 billion. You've got 2 years, you can run out there, and they mostly make it off of ancillary sales for like the posters and the videos, and not just the record. They'll have like 1 or 2 records, maybe 5 hit songs. If you tour them constantly, you run them ragged for 2 years, you run them right into the ground, and you sell all the stuff. It's $1 billion. It's as big as an Avengers movie. So I don't think people really understand exactly how much money can be made when you're in Bubblegum. So anyway, so that's the end of our presentation. I guess the thing that fascinated Kim and I from the start was that intersection, because even though there is that element of crass commercialism and exploitation, there's also some like interesting pop music that happened at the same time. Sometimes it's strange, as Becky articulated, where you have that undercurrent that's kind of bubbling under it. But one of the things I noted in the book is that people think because Bubblegum is manufactured, because producers put it together, it's very easy to do. As it turns out, it's very hard to create a perfect pop moment, and only a few people really are capable of giving you that sort of release that a great pop song can have. So, and that's something that we also love to celebrate about Bubblegum, even as we were quite aware of the cynical aspects of the genre. So, anyway, I just wanted to share that with you, and thank you for having us here.
You always blow my mind. And the internet has gotten better, hasn't it?
It was useless before.
Does anyone have questions? Because if they do, we'll pull out chairs and we'll answer questions. And if no one has questions, we'll just mingle. So we have a couple questions. We'll pull out some chairs. Give us a moment.
I brought my books, so I was bragging to Kim that I went to the Huntington today, which has a rare book library, but Kim and I have the only 2 hardbound editions of this book. So there are only 2 of these.
Well, now you're really showing off. There's probably don't have any books to sign.
That's right.
You have your 2 in a million.
Hello. Ooh. We have shoes.
I should also note that this embodies one of my pop cultural heroes. He wrote a book called Catalog of Cool and Too Cool. And a terrific guide for your late night viewing. So even though it's like the best movie, but also the best books. I for years and looked for chocolate for breakfast. Oh,
David, we can't hear you.
all right. Go ahead.
Project.
Project. Any questions? We'll take questions.
Yeah, hi. I just had a question about, I don't know, are you familiar, I think it was the third or fourth Archie's album called Sunshine?
Yeah.
Which is when they started to get like this like political countries.
Right, that's the Barkin Adams guys that came on. So
what is the story with that? Because it's so heavy.
it is so heavy. It's not as heavy as The Plan by the Osmonds, which is a concept album about the Book of Revelation. But what can be heavier than that? The story on that is that the Archies started off as Jeff Barry. The guy started Drill Building, so Barry and his wife, Ellie Greenwich, wrote all the classic songs for Phil Spector, like "Did You Run Ron" and "River Deep Mountain High." And then, so he was writing the Bubblegum songs. The work were being put out by Don Kirshner. And he worked mostly with Andy Kim, who I just mentioned before. They wrote Sugar Sugar and the great majority of the hits. And they included Tony Wine singing on them, Ron Dante sang all of the parts, and he used his regular session musicians. And they had a nice, tight little thing going there. But Tony Wine, who was like an insider in the business, was like, I'm not getting a cut of this. You're not like playing any of my songs, so I'm getting out of here. And then Andy Kim started to bust out, and he had his own hit. So he did Baby I Love You, which came out in '69, same year that Sugar Sugar's out, and he wants to be his own pop star. So he actually, I actually wrote about this, and I wrote, I think that Andy Kim had 3 albums out, and then there were 3 Archies albums out, and they also did the songwriting for the last Monkees album, The Changes. So they did like 4 albums in a year, if you can imagine, just kind of running around adopting all these persona. So basically, he got too busy, so the hit-making team, and then their deal, I think, with Filmation, or whoever was doing the thing, kind of dissipated it, so they just turned it over to Barkin Adams, another set of songwriters. So I talked a little bit on the Archies thing about their song, Little Green Jacket, just how kind of weirdly sleazy that song is. Yeah, so the last album is done by a completely different set of songwriters, and that's why and they just didn't care. They just, that was kind of the nice thing about a lot of Bubblegum, is that they were given complete leeway to do whatever they wanted to do. And so that's why the line is quite divergent. They were just like, yeah, we owe them one more album, we don't care, you can do whatever you want. And that's how that happened, so.
Attention everyone. The library will be closing in 30 minutes. The Technology Learning Center and Internet Station will be closing in 15 minutes. Please anticipate your printing needs and have your printing completed by 8:55. Wireless users, please end your session by 8:55. Thank you.
One of the things I thought it was really interesting, but I'm not sure who got this quote, Kim got the quote or whatever, but it was about how the Rollers reminded me of this. Was Joey Ramone said this to one of you, or some, I don't know where you got the quote about Sheena is a punk rocker. You know, I'm sorry to disappoint all you punk rockers,
like
but
said,
what was that story?
Oh well, Joey Ramone just like was this. Joey was a straight up, and Johnny too. They were both straight up Bubblegum fans, and so they said when they were doing like "Hey Ho, Let's Go," they just wanted it to be like the Bay City Rollers, with the chanting. They thought it made the song, and the Bubblegum, they were sort of unabashed Bubblegum fans, which is why we dedicated the book to Joey Ramone and Lester Bangs. So. Right, yeah, they did Indian Giver. There's a lot of connections, especially for those early punks and the new wave bands. When I was on the radio promoting this book when it first came out, I had them play Just What I Needed by the Cars, back with Yummy Yummy Yummy. It's the exact same opening. It was very specific and intended on the part of the Cars. They knew exactly what they were doing. That's one reason why the Cars were one of the first new wave bands to get regular radio play, because they like, let's start with a classic hit. So there's like a real consciousness of that. I'll just note again on the side that when we put this book out, Kim and I did 2 books, and then we've each done another book since then. This is the book that like other musicians want to talk to us about. This is the book that got me backstage at Guided by Voices. This is the book that like Jeff Tweedy wrote about in an art forum. So musicians are very cognizant of like kind of the impact of Bubblegum and just like the classic song structures and just. There was something sweet. That thing that Jeff Tweedy wrote about I thought was really sweet, which was just that he said. The most important thing is just kind of that emotional connection, and Bubblegum is like, it's an immediate connection to like a 14-year-old girl who's dancing in her room to like her 45s. And anyway, so so the Ramones are big Bubblegum fans. And I'll quit hogging the mic now. So
I just want to say I saw the Ramones. I heard the Ramones for the first time on 93 KHJ while listening to 70s Bubblegum basic song, and it fit in just perfectly. So.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add, after seeing all of that Rollers footage, I lived on a boat as a child and I didn't watch television, and I was at someone's house and it came on. And I've never been so terrified in my life, and I just looked at this other little girl and I said, I understand we're supposed to have crushes on boys, but what is this plaid business? Mr. Cole.
I noticed on one of the slides indicated that there was a film produced about Bubblegum.
Oh yeah, Kayla Janice wanted to learn how to edit footage. And she was working at the Alamo Draft House in Texas, and she asked permission, and this was right after this VH1 debacle. And she said, is it okay with you if I take the text of your book and just set it to a bunch of cartoons? And I said, well, you'll never get the music rights. And if you go into it understanding that, and you only show it for free, I have no problem with it. And I asked you guys, right? I hope I asked you. Yeah, so she just did it for fun, and then she screened it for free a few times. And I don't think she sells it or anything, but she occasionally screens it. And all of the text, no, but all of the text comes straight out of the book. And I asked her.
I hosted a screening in San Francisco. I hosted a screening of her documentary. We had like the Sour Grape Bunch go-go dancers come out and do it from the banana splits. So that was really fun. We had like all these garage rockers there with like, you know, Tina Lucchesi and Russell Kwan, and you know, it was a great turnout. Really, it's a really fun. It was especially considering how bad the VH1 had turned out. This was all of our own writing, and she's just reading it. It's just all edited to all these classic clips that you can never get the rights to. So Kim and I both have our own DVD copies. So you know, if you get to be really good friends with us, come over, shaker, martinis. We'll sit back and we'll watch it together. We should probably do that, just like host a Saturday morning show. It would be good. You know, spike the Cocoa Puffs. So, all right.
Writing always sounds better when it's in narration.
I think so. Yeah.
Well, the cute thing is she has this Canadian accent.
That's right. It works. Another question?
You mentioned the Alan Merrill Vodka Collins. Is that stuff on CD?
It is on CD. That was reissued in the 21st century. So like 3 or 4 years ago, I got my copy used off Amazon. And it's great. You can just look it up on YouTube. You can grab the songs like Automatic Pilot, Billy Mars. They're just great, straight-up rockers, just like rock and roll.
Pre-Euro stuff.
Yep, very similar to the Euro stuff, and but a little more T-Rex influenced. But it sounds tight. And it's great. It's
and
like
is it Japanese reissue with an Obi, or is it?
I don't know, but no, it was like a domestic. It didn't cost me like $30 or anything like that. I got it like relatively cheap. But yeah, I would say check it out on YouTube. You can hear those things and get a sense of them. One reason I did like the glam rock stuff is because I've really been getting into this junk shop glam thing that people have been talking about, which is an aspect of the bubblegumminess of it. It was like people would put out these glam records out of nowhere that made these made-up bands that had these great images that they would never have an actual album out. So there'd be bands like Buster and Hector and things like that. Or there were like existing bands that would get like a makeover, would be the other thing that they did. And then I found this website, if you're interested in that. There's a band called Crazy Kids, with 2 Z's and 2 E's, and they collect Crazy Kids, and they have, this person has collected a bunch of glam singles from Europe. So what happened is that glam and bubblegum become sort of a default setting for rock and roll as you go rolling into Europe. So if you really want to see something that will like amuse you, look up the band called the Rockets and doing a song called Future Woman. So it's kind of on the cusp of glam disco in Prague, a French band where they shave their heads, come out in space gear, and are completely silver. So and it sounds amazing. So anyway, so somebody else can answer that question.
There's questions over here.
Over there.
Yeah. Would you say Crimson Clover is the good vibrations of Bubblegum?
I would say that. I would have to say that.
I don't know if I would call Crimson Clover bubblegum specifically. I mean, yeah, right. It's like very, very tuneful, but I don't know. It's bubblegum.
Pop site,
yeah.
Yeah, Tommy James.
Yeah, Tommy James is like he had such an interesting career. He started, his first hit came out when he was 14, and his first hit, when I note this in the book when I'm talking about like how Jeff Berry kind of like draws all the way through the history of bubblegum. But that's a song. Hanky Panky was the song that he wrote in his group, The Raindrops, that he did with Ellie Greenwich when he was still like a drill building guy. And it was a B-side which just kind of tossed away. And Tommy James, again, that's how the story is sort of like the Rollers thing, where he put that record out and it was not a hit anywhere except Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They could have a regional hit, which you don't have anymore, like that concept where you could break a record in one region. And there were guys out there working, the A&R guys were out there, the hustlers were out there, and they were doing the thing over. And they would make a record break. And that's what happened with Hanky Panky, which, he recorded that when he was 14, it wasn't a hit until he was 16, and then he starts having his own career with the hits with Cordell. So.
Front row.
Splits earlier. What is the connection between the Banana Splits theme song and Bob Marley's Buffalo Soldier?
I have no idea.
I don't know, right? Is this a quiz question? I'm not sure I can answer that. Is it the same? Oh, the tra-la-la? Is that where I got it? You see, basically what happened, you get like a lot of rockers who are like on tour, they're sitting around a hotel room, they're drunk, they're hungover, they wake up the next morning, the Banana Splits are on, it makes no sense to them. And they're just like, yeah, that'll work. And it's like the Bee Gees did that. They took the lyric, they have an album called Cucumber Castle, which is from a lyric from the Banana Splits as well. And if you're still looking into there are a couple of other interesting tidbits about the Banana Splits. Well, I mean, Al Cooper wrote some songs for them, Two-Tone Tessie and Barry White. Doing the Banana Splits, y'all. So that's a Barry White song. So they, that was a really interesting conjunction of events there. I love the Banana Splits when I was growing up. All right, another.
Ben Merlis.
There's a chapter in the Bubblegum book about a TV show from the 80s called Kids Incorporated, and it was written by Peter Guyberger. I went to high school with that guy, and I fell out of touch with him. How did he? It's a tragic story. He faked his own death, and then he really died 6 years later. But
what's the question?
Oh my God! How did he end up writing a chapter in that book?
Peter was one of my best friends, and he was one of those brilliant people who I pestered direct for Scram. He did a great piece about black velvet paintings for Scram 10, which I think is online. And yeah, he wanted to write about it because he was like 10 or 15 years younger than the rest of us. He wanted to write something from his experience, and so that's what he wrote. And yeah, we faked his death because he wanted to move to New Orleans. So it was decided that after a cacophony society, this was such a bad idea. After a cacophony society haunted house, an announcement came out that there was a terrible car accident with two guys who were working on the haunted house, and one was killed and the other was completely bereft. And because of this, Reverend Al, who was the leader of Cacophony, this, I don't even know how to do it. Anarchist art group of clowns. He was becoming a born-again Christian, and he hoped everyone would join him. And a lot of people really believed Peter had died, and were very broken up about it. And then Peter came back, and people were very angry at him. And then Peter actually did die, because he thought it would be a good idea after getting out of jail to shoot up heroin at the Biltmore Hotel bathroom. And he actually did die, and no one believed it. But he's a damn good writer, and he was a really great rock and roller too. And
Funny guy.
he was a very funny guy.
Questions?
I was just more curious from an analytical standpoint. Have you ever thought about which was the first Bubblegum?
It depends on how you define it. I mean, well, when we started getting into the book, we're like, well, how do you define bubblegum? Because we started realizing people use the term very loosely, and so we used what we call the diagnostic model. If you showed like 5 of these 8 symptoms, you might be a bubblegum band, and that helped us have a very inclusive approach to the thing. So when people say bubblegum, they often mean just disposable music, because that's kind of how they were saying. It's like something you chew, you spit out, and it's done. You don't have to think about it. It's just a pop hit that sticks in your ears, and it's good. And then people also thought, well, it's really like, the faceless producer bands that came out on Buddha. That's really kind of the beginning of bubblegum. And then you start, but if you take that tack, then you kind of back up a little bit and go, well, but that's what Gary Usher was doing with the Hondells and the Rebels. Yeah, Spectre, exactly. Yeah, well, he kind of like would just switch the musicians around, and if they couldn't get like the crystals handy, he would just use Darlene Love or something like that. So that's kind of like endemic to like the whole approach of the drill building. I would say the first bubblegum hit is pretty much Green Tambourine, but as you were saying, it's really more of a pop psych record than bubblegum, so I think like the Ohio Express, Yummy Yummy Yummy, I think would be like, to me, like the classic bubblegum era. But there's certainly like precursors to it, like, the Tommy James actually came out before that, and Hanky Panky was before that, 67. So you start seeing that sort of a vibe. We talked a lot about the West Coast scene, which you would not normally include in the bubblegum thing, but there were so many people like Gary Zeckley, the Old Balloon was another interesting sort of studio-created group. And so we talked. The more we looked at like Gary Usher, we're like, oh, he's pretty much just a typical bubblegum hustler. You know, like there's no Rat Fink, you know, and there's no like the Weirdos is not a band. You know, it's just the same studio guys, and he's putting out this image. And you know, instead of like doing a TV show like the Monkees, he had Beach movies to kind of do it. So they would like run them out and do it the same sort of thing. And those Beach movies were kind of like every 6 months practically. So I mean, I would say Yummy 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 is kind of like the beginning of the classic bubblegum era. But again, you know, it kind of depends on the definition. We also included things like just very upbeat dance music marketed to like preteen girls. You know, cartoon bands. You know, bands where the members were all like 14 and younger. Which includes actually a lot of surprising people. I mean, you know, Alex Chilton was like 15 when he recorded The Letter. You know, you don't realize how young he was. Like Tommy James, I mentioned, was 14. You know, Debbie Gibson, just like a lot of these bands were just so young. And that's why, you know, that's why you get like the bitter genius of Alex Chilton later, because he got very exploited and going off and getting used up on the road like they did. So, anyway.
I think another thing too, a lot of people sort of think of it, I'd go along with you saying Yummy Yummy is probably, but I think a lot of people confuse just very upbeat, very melodic pop, and there are a lot of precedents for bubblegum, namely doo-wop stuff, up-tempo doo-wop stuff from the 50s, which has, you know, tra-la-las and sha-la-las and stuff. And it just occurred to me when we were talking about Richie Cordell, who wrote some of those Tommy James records. I was trolling around YouTube last week, and there's a Richie Cordell record from 1961 that was played, if not a hit, in New York. And typical up-tempo doo-wop record called Tick Tock, about a clock. And it was written by Paul Simon. So all these people have these roots somewhere, and there are precedents for all this stuff.
Tim, this young lady has a question. We have to wrap it up.
Oh, I have a question for David.
Yes.
With like indie rock now, and there's record labels like Burger Records and Lollipop.
Right.
And can we see the connection between what those labels are doing now as
Right.
indie labels and the beginning?
Attention everyone. The Technology Learning Center and Internet stations are now closed, and the library will be closing in 15 minutes.
I think there's definitely a connection. I wrote a chapter on bubblegum and new wave, which I think is where you first get that. I said that new wave is not bubblegum in any element of its production, except that it treated bubblegum music as like a cargo cult. This is what pop music is supposed to sound like. So the Rosillos and the B-52s came out looking with these amazing, you know, cartoony-looking effects, even though they were like self-contained bands. You know, writing their own songs, producing their own stuff. They weren't like created that way, but they made dancey pop music. And then it becomes like an aesthetic. I think it goes right into the pop punk sort of aesthetic. I think the Ramones are kind of like your through line into all of these bands, like on Burger Records. You know, Becky was just up there for the Burger Records big event up in Oakland recently. So they had the Mummies out there. You know, like a band like the Mummies, it's really like taking, you know, Lancelot Link to the next evolution. You know, you're just kind of cranking it up there. And I think there's such an affection. Yeah.
The Mummies were a real band. I mean, come on. I mean,
they're a real band.
They have a gimmick, but the fun of it, if you're not being exploited, you're not a bubblegum band.
Yeah.
So if you want to go out and be exploited, I recommend it for a swinger for a case. I should mention, maybe we can do it for Western or something, but I should mention if anyone wants to continue this conversation, Conrad's is a diner. It's about half a mile to the east of here on Walnut, so we'll go there after.
We have to wrap this up to throw us out of the library.
No, they're going to throw us out of the library.
And I want people to try and buy your scrams because we're running out of room in our basement.
One last question.
You're writing a sequel for your book.
You had a question, Mr. Video Man.
Me? I have a whole bunch of questions. Hanky Panky, if you're interested in Hanky Panky, by the Raindrops, the original version, completely different song. It's about a dance.
Right.
And one line about a dance, Hanky Panky repeat. And then Tommy James or somebody added a Boy Meets the Girl, a different record. There was a group touring locally at Sweet a couple years ago, the Big Universal. Was that with Steve Priest?
That was Steve Priest.
That was Steve Priest.
Steve Priest and Andy Scott, the guitarist, yeah, are the only two surviving members, and so they split up so Steve Priest gets America, and Andy Scott gets England. And Steve Priest is the one that was wearing the Hitler ensemble. He's kind of
Are they not allowed in their countries?
Yeah, yeah, no, it's just by mutual agreement. They have like just a tragic ending. Like Brian Connolly, their beautiful lead singer there, like in '74, he came out of a club and a couple of guys jumped him and they kicked him in the throat and they ruined his singing voice. So he lost like his high range, his voice got much rougher. But that's actually the same time the Sweet took over their own recordings. They stopped doing Jimmy Chef songs. They started doing their own stuff, and that's where they started doing all the stacked vocals of stuff. You get things like On Fox and the Run, Action, Love's Like Oxygen, all of those later songs, which were a huge inspiration for Queen, actually. Brian May pretty much came up to like Andy Scott and he said, oh, we totally ripped that off. We love that stuff. So and that's you get where Bohemian Rhapsody kind of comes from that. So there's like a continuation with that stuff. But like the story of like the basic rollers of Sweet, just they wind up just becoming like really tragic. You know, the kind of the more you dig into it. I didn't know this about Brian Connolly, but he was adopted out of the hospital. This teenage mother, no father available, just left him in the hospital when he was 2 years old. And he got fostered out to a family. They took him in and loved him, and he played a lot of music, but I think, it affected him, so he became a terrible alcoholic late in his career, and he lost his voice, and he kicked in the throat. So they started doing all the high harmonies on the songs, things like that. Steve Priest did the high harmonies, but they soldiered on.
So as you can see, Bubblegum is just the happiest stuff.
No tragedies here. So